The rain slammed against the window of my Brooklyn apartment, a relentless drumbeat that matched the chaos in my chest. I'd only known Elias for 3 weeks, but his quiet intensity had already turned my world upside down. And now, a 6-year-old boy with his eyes was staring at me, calling me Papa like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm Theo Carter, a 29-year-old graphic designer who thought moving to New York City would be my big break. Instead, I was drowning in freelance gigs that barely paid the rent. When my old roommate bailed, leaving me with a lease I couldn't afford, I posted a desperate ad online. Elias Monroe answered within Horse's soft-spoken barista with a crooked smile and a duffel bag that looked like it had seen better days. He paid the first month's rent in cash, no questions asked, and moved in that night. I should have known then that anyone that efficient had something to hide. Our apartment was a cramped 2-bedroom in Bed-Stuy, with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall. Elias kept to himself at first, brewing coffee so good it felt like a small miracle every morning. But there was something about him, maybe the way his green eyes flickered with unspoken stories, or how his hands trembled slightly when he thought I wasn't looking, that made me want to know more. I caught myself watching him, noticing the curve of his jaw when he laughed, the way he hummed old jazz tunes while washing dishes. I told myself it was just curiosity. I wasn't ready to admit it was something else. One night, after a bottle of cheap wine, Elias opened up. We were sprawled on the couch, the city's hum seeping through the walls. He told me he'd grown up in a small town in Georgia, where being openly gay was a risk he couldn't take. He'd left at 18, chasing freedom, but the details were vague, something about a falling out with his family, a life he'd rather forget. His voice cracked when he mentioned a kid, a son he hadn't seen in years. I didn't press him. I knew what it was like to carry wounds you didn't want to show. Days turned into weeks, and our routine became a quiet kind of comfort. I'd sketch at the kitchen table while Elias read, his long fingers turning pages with care. Sometimes our knees brushed under the table, and neither of us pulled away. I started to imagine what it would be like to close the distance, to feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. But every time I got close, he'd pull back, his eyes clouded with something I couldn't name. Then came the knock on the door that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the city feels almost gentle. I was flipping pancakes when someone pounded on the door sharp, insistent. Elias froze, his coffee mug halfway to his lips. "I'll get it," I said, but he was already moving, his face pale. Standing in the hallway was a woman with tired eyes and a boy clutching her hand. The kid had Elias's eyes, green as sea glass, and a shy smile that hit me like a punch. "Elias," the woman said. Her voice clipped. "We need to talk." Her name was Clara, Elias's sister. She'd driven all the way from Georgia with his son, Noah. Their parents had passed away, and Clara couldn't keep Noah anymore, not with her own kids and a job that barely covered the bills. "He's your responsibility," she said, her words sharp, but her eyes soft with guilt. Elias stood there, silent, his hands clenched into fists. I could see the storm in him, the weight of a past he'd tried to outrun. Noah, though, didn't care about the tension. He wandered into the apartment, his small sneakers squeaking on the floor. He stopped in front of me, tilting his head. "Are you Papa's friend?" he asked, his voice bright and curious. Before I could answer, he added, "You look nice. Like a papa." My heart stopped. Elias's eyes snapped to mine, wide with panic. Clara sighed, muttering something about needing to get back on the road. And just like that, she was gone, leaving Noah's small backpack on the floor and 1,000 questions in the air. That night, Elias and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, Noah asleep in Elias's bed. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. I didn't know she was coming, Elias finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I haven't seen Noah since he was 2. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wanted to ask why he'd left, what had happened, but the raw pain in his eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached across the table, my hand brushing his. You're not alone in this, I said. He didn't pull away, but he didn't meet my gaze either. For the first time, I saw fear in him, not of Noah, but of himself. The next few days were a whirlwind of makeshift parenting. Noah was a burst of energy, his laughter filling the apartment like sunlight breaking through clouds. He'd trail after Elias, asking a million questions: why the sky was blue, why coffee smelled so good, why Elias's hands shook sometimes. I watched Elias try to keep up, his answers gentle but hesitant, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I stepped in when I could, distracting Noah with crayons or stories about my childhood in Ohio. But every night, when Noah was asleep, Elias would retreat into himself, staring out the window like he was searching for answers in the city lights. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment at the table, the way his hand felt under mine. I'd never been good at relationships, too many late nights working, too many walls I'd built after a bad breakup. But Elias was different. He was a puzzle I wanted to solve, a warmth I wanted to hold on to. Yet every time I got close, he'd pull back, his past a shadow between us. One evening, while Noah was coloring at the kitchen table, I found Elias in the living room, holding that worn photo of Noah I'd seen before. He doesn't even know me, Elias said, his voice thick with guilt. I left because I thought it was better for him. His mom, she didn't want me around. Said I was too unstable. Me. I sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat of his shoulder. You're here now? I said. That's what matters. He looked at me then, his green eyes searching mine. And for a moment, I thought he might lean in. But Noah called out, asking for more paper. And the moment slipped away. The truth about Elias's past came in fragments, like pieces of a shattered mirror. He'd been in love once, with a woman named Lily, Noah's mother. They were young, reckless, and living in a town that didn't take kindly to Elias's truth. When Lily got pregnant, Elias tried to make it work, but the pressure of hiding who he was broke him. He left when Noah was 2, thinking it was the only way to protect them both. He'd spent the years since drifting, working odd jobs, trying to outrun the guilt. I listened, my heart aching for him. I wanted to tell him I understood, that I'd spent years hiding parts of myself to me art, my feelings, my hopes. But before I could, Noah bounded into the room, holding up a drawing of 3 stick figures labeled Papa, Theo, and me. My throat tightened. Elias's eyes glistened, and he pulled Noah into a hug, whispering, "You're my brave boy." That night, after Noah was asleep, Elias and I stood in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. The air was thick with unspoken words. I turned to him, my heart pounding. "Elias." I started, but he cut me off, his voice low. "Don't. Theo. You don't know what you're getting into." His eyes were pleading, but there was a spark of something else: want. Maybe. Or fear of wanting. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the coffee on his breath. "I'm not afraid of complicated," I said. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his hand grazed mine. Tentative. Electric. It was the smallest gesture, but it felt like a promise. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to find Elias gone, his bed empty. A note on the kitchen table read, "I need to figure this out. Take care of Noah. I'll be back." My stomach dropped. I didn't know if he was running from me, from Noah, or from himself. All I knew was that I was left holding the pieces of a family I hadn't asked for and a heart that was already too invested. Noah didn't understand why Elias was gone. "Where's Papa?" he asked, his small voice trembling as he clutched my hand. I didn't have an answer, so I distracted him with pancakes and a trip to the park. But inside, I was unraveling. Elias's absence was a hole in the apartment. In me, I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen, the way his hand had lingered on mine. Had I pushed too far? Or was he running from something bigger? I called Clara, hoping she'd know where he went. Her voice was tired but kind. "Elias has always been like this," she said. "He runs when things get heavy. But he loves Noah. And I think he cares about you." She didn't know where he was, but she promised to let me know if she heard from him. I hung up, feeling more lost than ever. Days turned into a week. I took care of Noah, balancing work and playdates, trying to keep his world steady. He was a bright kid, full of questions and laughter. But I saw the worry in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. I taught him how to draw superheroes, and he'd giggle, saying I was Captain Theo, the pancake protector. But every night, I'd check my phone, hoping for a message from Elias. Nothing. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. I'm in Georgia. Needed to face something. Back soon." My heart leapt, then sank. Georgia. His past. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was relief that he was okay and a nagging fear that he might not come back. I threw myself into keeping Noah happy. We built a fort out of blankets in the living room, watched old cartoons, and talked about everything except Elias. But one night, Noah crawled into my lap, his small body warm against mine. "Theo," he whispered, "are you going to be my papa too?" I froze. The word hit me like a wave, pulling me under. I hugged him tight, unable to speak, because the truth was, I didn't know what I was to Heimer to Elias. 2 days later, Elias came back. I was reading to Noah when the door opened, and there he was, looking worn but whole, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Noah ran to him, wrapping his arms around Elias's legs. "Papa," he cried, and Elias dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I stood back, my heart caught between joy and uncertainty. "I want to see Lily," Elias said later, after Noah was asleep. We were on the couch, a safe distance between us. I needed to know if she'd changed, if she'd let me be part of Noah's life. His voice was raw, like he'd been carrying the weight of that trip for years. Lily had moved on, married, stable. She'd agreed to let Elias have custody, but only if he could prove he was ready. "I'm not sure I am," he admitted, his eyes meeting mine. "But I want to try. For him. And for us." The word "us" hung in the air, fragile and full of possibility. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him I was all in. But I needed to know he wouldn't run again. "You can't keep leaving," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Not from Noah. Not from me." He nodded, his hand finding mine. "I know," he whispered. "I'm done running." And then, slowly, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine. It was soft, tentative, but it set my heart on fire. For the first time, I felt like we were standing on the same ground. No shadows between us. The weeks that followed were a dance of new beginnings. Elias and I navigated our feelings with care, stealing moments when Noah was asleep, a kiss in the kitchen, a quiet conversation on the fire escape. We were building something, not just for us, but for Noah, who was starting to feel like ours. But the world outside our apartment wasn't always kind. Elias's past still cast a long shadow, and I could see it in the way he tensed when we walked through the neighborhood. his eyes scanning for judgment. One afternoon, while Noah played at the park, Elias told me about the legal battle ahead. Lily's husband wanted to ensure Elias was stable, and they'd hired a lawyer to monitor the custody arrangement. It meant social worker visits, paperwork, and proving to a system that didn't always understand families like ours that we could give Noah a home. I saw the fear in Elias's eyes, but also a fire I hadn't seen before. He was fighting for his son, and I was determined to fight with him. We started small, setting up a routine for Noah, enrolling him in school, turning the second bedroom into a space that felt like his. I painted murals of stars and superheroes on his walls, and Elias hung fairy lights, his hands steady for the first time in weeks. Noah's laughter became the heartbeat of our home, and every time he called me Papa, it felt less like a surprise and more like a truth. But the tension wasn't gone. One night, a social worker came by unannounced, her clipboard a silent accusation. She asked Elias pointed questions about his past, his time on the road, his mental health, his ability to parent. I watched him answer with quiet strength, but I could see the toll it took. When she left, he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "What if they take him?" he whispered. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "They won't," I said fiercely. "We're in this together. You, me, no, we're a family." The word slipped out before I could stop it, but it felt right. Elias looked at me, his eyes wet but steady. "I don't deserve you," he said, but I shook my head. "You don't get to decide that," I said, pulling him close. "I choose you. I choose us." Months later, the custody hearing came. It was a gray day in Manhattan, the courthouse looming like a judgment. Elias and I sat side by side, Noah between us, clutching a stuffed dinosaur I'd bought him. The lawyer presented our case: Elias's job at the coffee shop, our stable home, the school reports that showed Noah thriving. I testified about our life together, my voice steady even as my heart raced. When Noah took the stand, his small voice clear and bright, he said, "I love my Papa and Theo. They make me happy." The judge's ruling came down like a gavel on our future: full custody to Elias, with visitation rights for Lily. Relief flooded through us, and Elias grabbed my hand, his grip tight. Noah hugged us both, his laughter echoing in the sterile courtroom. That night, back in our apartment, we celebrated with pizza and music, Noah dancing between us. Elias pulled me aside, his eyes soft in the dim light. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for staying, for believing in me." I kissed him, slow and sure, the world falling away. "Always," I said, and as Noah ran to us, calling out Papa and Theo, I knew we'd built something unbreakably: a family born from courage, love, and the willingness to face the past to claim a future.